This episode was brought to you by Resilient Nutrition. Pals, greetings, and welcome to another episode of Everything Endurance. It is, as always, a pleasure to have you with us today. I'm terribly sorry about last week. I realised it's been a slightly longer gap than you guys have got used to before we had a new episode out. But I had a couple of weeks away from the world. I had a couple of weeks offline, basically hibernating, while I celebrated my 40th birthday. Yeah, that happened. Turned 40. Not particularly keen on that bit, but, you know, they say life begins here. I guess we're going to find out now, aren't we? I hope you like the article that I did release last week instead. That's something I've been planning to do for ages and I just hadn't had the time to do, was go back through our back catalogue, because much to my surprise, I keep putting these episodes out. What I don't have a lot of time to do is to go back and reflect on what we've already done, and all of a sudden we're over 60 episodes. So I've been back through all of those episodes and categorized them into different categories. So if you're looking for nutritional information, you can find that. If you're looking for people talking about, you know, coaching and strength work, you can find that. If you're just looking for inspirational adventurers, we got tons of them. We even got a category just for our friends at the Spine. So if you're interested in the Spine race, all the people that I've interviewed who've been involved in that are on there as well. If you have a look on Beyond the Ultimate Facebook or Twitter, you're going to find links to that. So go back and have a look. We've got the whole back catalogue categorized for you. So peruse, enjoy. And I'm going to add like, share, and review. I forget to say that as often as I should. It really does help us out when you guys do that. And I like having people to talk to, you know? So comment on the episodes. Send us your reviews. This should be a two-way conversation, and I want to hear what you guys are thinking. So please send your reviews. Comment on the episodes if you've enjoyed them or not. And like and share the episodes so we can get more people listening. The higher those numbers get, the more people I can get on the show for you to listen to. So, you know, this is a whole reciprocal thing we've got going on here. Down to business, I suppose. Business. We've been in the business for the last sort of 18 months of cancelling and postponing things and adapting and making new plans, and it's all been very challenging and very unusual, but we're just seeing this little glimmer of light on the horizon now. Just there's hope. There are events planned for the rest of this year, and it's looking rosy at the moment, so all fingers crossed. Later this year in October, we've got the postponed Highland Ultra, which is going to be happening in October. So, you know, we're going to have some more autumnal weather. If anything, that's going to make it a little bit more of a challenge than it might have been before. But if you're signing up for a 125 kilometer event, who's not looking for a challenge, right? So yeah, head to beyondtheultimate.co.uk. There are still places available to come and join us for our brand new Scottish race this October. It's something like the third weekend in October, but go and have a look on the website and find out exactly which one it is. We're talking 3 days in one of the most remote and isolated areas of the UK. We're talking mountains at 125 kilometers, fully marked course with checkpoints along the way, with medics and water for you, campsite set up and managed for you each night. We're even having guest speakers come in and people leading workshops in the evening so you can learn a bit more about the discipline of ultra running while you're resting between stages. So definitely go and have a look for that. Highland Ultra, beyondtheultimate.co.uk. And let's move along, shall we? Let's have a chat about today's guest. This was a great interview. I really enjoyed talking to this guy. He's just one of those sort of infectiously positive people that by their very nature inspire you to go out and do awesome things. We are talking to someone who refers to himself as an adventure athlete, journalist, and author. He has an extremely, and I mean, you'll see, if you are watching this on YouTube, should see the rack of medals he's got hanging up behind him in his podcast studio. He has an extremely extensive race CV in many different disciplines as well. So this isn't someone who's a runner and just in it for the running. He is multi-disciplinary. He's tried whatever takes his fancy. He is out there doing that. He is a man who is himself inspired to go out and do these amazing things and has a mission to inspire you. you yourself to go and get outside and challenge yourself. He's already written 2 books and published them, so 50 races to do before you die. You should definitely go and have a look at that. If you're looking for races you should do before you die. And Go is fantastic. Go is a book all about empowering yourself to go out and have these adventures, to challenge yourself and see where your limits are, and just have a fantastic time adventuring in the outdoors. Without further ado, I am very much, of course, talking about Tobias Mews. So welcome then, Tobias Mews. How are we? How are we, sir?
Well, I'm delighted to be here, to be honest with you. It's a great break. Just a few minutes ago, before we came on this, I was smashing a bathroom to pieces in one of my DIY.
In a fit of rage?
I could have got a fit of rage. I did have a small fit of rage, and then the bathroom hit back at me and smashed me in the shins. So it's actually very nice to have a break. And I think my wife wakes up sometimes in the morning and has this kind of list of tasks in her head, and she just kind of presses F1 and it just prints out, and then she hands me this little ticket, and off I go. And on the task this morning it was smash guest
the
bathroom. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a fun morning. At least it's a cathartic experience after the sort of rubbishy year we've all been having. I could smash up a bathroom myself. I absolutely could.
Yeah.
But no, it's a pleasure to have you here as well. And also, it's really nice to be sort of looking at somebody on the other end who's got really fancy podcasting equipment as well. This has got to be a genuine pleasure for the listeners. You sound marvelous, Tobias.
Thank you. Well, I do my best. I'll do my best radio voice for you.
Why, thank you, sir. Why, thank you. Thanks for talking to us today. It's greatly appreciated. You're sort of someone whose career I've been watching here and there over the few years that I've been involved in the ultra running scene, and someone that I keep hearing people around me talk about. And yeah, it's great to have the opportunity to actually talk to you face to face. I think.
Thank you.
We should just get straight into things. Really, I'd like to really delve into Tobias Mews and the adventuring world that you live in. So,
it might be very short. We'll do our best.
Well, let's try and pad it out a bit if we can. Let's go back to the beginning. I mean, one thing that I always wind up asking people who I bring on as sort of adventure guests is where did this begin for you? Were you an adventurous youth?
No, God, no. I mean, honestly, I think if there was a sort of vote at school as to who would be most likely to go and run, I don't think ultra marathons really existed when I was at school in the early 90s, not in the traditional sense they are today. But yeah, no, I played squash and golf, and in my sixth form I played croquet. That was some of my sports, and I was pretty good at sport, although I was surrounded by people far more talented than me. So I never really pursued the kind of athletic side of my career as a child and adolescent, and I wish I had. And I went to a posh public school called Millfield down in Somerset, and this place produces Olympians like I don't know, Westminster produces politicians, and
wow.
I think there's been something like 50 Olympians. So it was quite difficult trying to compete with people that good when I didn't really feel like I had any natural talents. So I was a sort of jack of all trades, and I never really went. I got to a stage where I was okay, but never exceptional, and or I'd get bored as soon as I got to the place where I thought I was pretty good, and then I would move on to the next sport, croquet or whatever it is. And so no, nothing. I have got no adventurous streak in me at all. I was an only child, and I grew up making camps in our woods, and I grew up on a farm. So yes, surrounded by nature, but nothing extreme. And actually, really, I think the kind of the pivot point, the kink curve moment happened actually when I decided to join the army when I was around, I guess 24, 25. So it was quite late into my life that I actually realized that there was actually more in me than I imagined.
So was being in the military kind of the jumping off point for your adventure career? Is that where you I suppose running was kind of enforced in that environment?
Yeah. Yes, it was. But weirdly, running actually played very little in my army career. I mean, the role it played officially was tiny, and this is the great irony, of course. Everybody imagines that you just, they see lots of films and they just imagine that you're constantly running places, or with a rucksack, or in our case, a Bergen. That's what they call it. And the answer is yes, but you do more walking. Or tabbing, as they call it in the military, than you do necessarily, running. And you do various fitness tests. And I can remember actually my first ever fitness test in fact, going much further back, when I decided to join, which was a suggestion of a friend of mine called Guy, and he said, you should give it a go. And I come from a long line of military people in my family. I'm the fourth generation to end up joining what's called the Royal Regiment of Artillery, the Gunners. And
wow.
So it's the closest I can get to a kind of family firm, a family company, I guess. But no one was alive to really kind of encourage me from my family, because they've all passed away. On the sort of the various generations above me. So it was just a kind of something the knowledge that I belong to this family company, but never have taken it any further than just kind of reading books. So and then I did what's called the regular commissions board, which is your sort of entrance selection test to get in, and it's several days worth of tests. And eventually I did get in, but only by the skin of my teeth, because they said to me, in terms of you're okay in your sort of leadership stuff, but we're a bit worried about your physical abilities.
Really?
Your fitness is really under par. Yeah, I mean, I just got in, and I passed the test on let's say a Friday, I think. On the Monday, they said, you've got in, but, with this caveat that basically only just, and they're really worried about my fitness levels. And then they said, well, would you like to start Sandhurst on Sunday, which is Sandhurst is where you go to become an officer, your officer's training. And so I was like, oh, okay. And so this moment of panic and like, well, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. I'm now 25. I'm getting too old to kind of do it later on. So so off I went, basically, and I went on Sunday, bought lots of coat hangers and ironing boards, and I arrived there my first day at Sandhurst, and they put you into basically a boiler suit, and I was a bit of overweight, and so when they asked us to come to attention, I mean, I've never marched or stood kind of, should we say, stood to attention ever before. There's lots of others who had done it at university, or done kind of cadets or whatever, or even Boy Scouts. I hadn't done anything like that, and so I stood to attention. Or my poppers, like the ones on my children's. I've got very young children; they still have poppers. They just burst open in my chest. I popped out, and so I thought, this is not good. And that was pretty much the beginning of my adventures, should we say, in the military. But I soon discovered something very, very important that. Great to the irony is that I almost didn't get in, but the thing I discovered was that if you were fit, you were respected. If you weren't fit, you didn't get the respect. And it's almost as simple as that. I mean, you can be the most likable person, you can have the brain of Einstein, but essentially if you're not fit, you will not gain the trust and leadership of your and respect, should we say, of your fellow peers and of your soldiers and everybody around you. They just look at you and they judge you. And if you're not looking in shape, then you just don't get it. So anyway, so that's basically, I learned that I needed to work on that side of things, and so I did. So I went from being barely able to get in to actually becoming one of the fastest runners in my company, and I guess overall in Sandhurst, weirdly.
Wow, incredible. And something seems to have flicked a switch in your head there. I mean, I don't know, how long were you in the forces for, and when did you sort of start taking on more what we'd call an endurance challenge?
I was in just a blip. I just did 5.5 years. So just the sort of my later part of my 20s, basically, cutting into a bit into my 30s. And it was really, I only did a handful of events when I was serving, because it was just very difficult to plan. We were always in operations or somewhere else. And whatever if you're trying to, I tried to enter an Ironman at one point, and yeah, it was just got disintegrated immediately as soon as some exercise came up. You just can't. You don't really have the time to yourself to plan anything, even a wedding or anything. I missed my best friend's wedding because I was on exercise and that kind of stuff. So, and I was the best man. So that that was using a race as an excuse wasn't enough to get permission. So I guess I just did a handful of bits and bobs. Like I did Tough Guy and an which I didn't complete. The first race I didn't complete, and pretty much one of the only now out of 200 or 300 I've done. And wow. And then just lots of kind of military cross country events. I did cross country in the army, and the odd triathlon basically, and it was fun. But I had this desire, this great desire to do something big when I finally left the army, and I think that moment, that was in 2008, and my best friend and I we'd now handed in our notice, and we'd just about kind of stopped receiving money from the army now, and we were like, what should we do now, And so this friend of mine called Phil, who's one of my best mates, he said, well, why don't we go and do the Marathon des Sables? And I was like, I didn't really know much about it at all, and I was like, okay, cool. And I did a bit of googling later, and he said, right, we need to be on the website on, I don't know, let's say the 11th of July, and it opens at 10 o'clock, and we need to be there, like literally we can't be late. So
it's like Glastonbury tickets.
Oh, yeah. You literally can't be late. And so we were both within a minute, we were both online. And they ask you to, it was like, this is 2008, and the next place available was 2011. So it's quite far away. So
wow.
No job, about to go back to university to do my master's, didn't have a clue what I'll be doing in 2011. And so it's quite strange. And then being asked to put down 500 quid deposit, knowing that I still had another $3,000, $4,000 to find later on. I was like, it's a bit nerve-wracking. And so anyway, I got my immediate email back saying, ta-da, you've got in, well done, congratulations. And then my friend Phil, who was there at the same time, he got back you didn't get in, but you were on the waiting list. It was that. It was selling like hotcakes. I don't know if it's the same now, but back then it was very difficult to get a place immediately. So that was the kind of the beginning of, should we say, of the next phase 2 of my kind of athletic career. But I mean, I must say something. I would never call myself an adventurer. I call myself an adventure athlete. That's about, I kind of like see the fusion of the two. I haven't crossed Greenland by skis, and I haven't gone to the South Pole or the North Pole. I haven't gone anywhere near it. I haven't done any world first expeditions. I don't, regularly sleep in a tent and on top of a hill. I do pretty much everything around some form of physical endeavor, but there's almost always a kind of like a real short-term goal to it. They don't last much longer than a week or 8 days, 10 days, and they tend to be within the confines of a race or my own creation and my own little kind of, like, should we say, my own race, but with just me and a watch.
For anyone who's in any way outside the ultra running scene, it's got to seem a bit balmy to be saying, I'm not really an adventurer. They're only sort of 6, 7, 8 day events that I'm off doing. I mean, these are still massive challenges that you're taking on. And as someone who's sort of worked behind the scenes on quite a few of these now over the last few years, I'd say there's a sort of disproportionately high percentage of people involved in these races who are from military backgrounds. Something about it seems to breed people who want another challenge, or maybe just a group of people who aren't encumbered by that same sense of limitation that most of us are when we look at ultra running from the outside. Would you say that's been your experience of it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that goes back in quite a long way. I mean, whether you took the military people who want to go off and lead actual expeditions somewhere exciting and far flung, the number of military people are much higher than just your ordinary civilian. I think sort of the type of Ranna Fines is a classic example, but there are so many more than that who have a military past. And I think the reason why it's recently exploded a lot with the kind of the military side connected to the endurance side is kind of as I explained. You get this. Should we say there's two types of people? There's one type that that were maybe fit at school. They were athletic. They talked about how they were great when they were 9 years old and the, under 10 athletic championship, whatever it is, you know what they called those back then. But, and they raced for their school and they did all this, and they still kind of, even when they're in their 40s, they talk about how fit they were at school. And then they have one of those, I got to return back to where I was, and somehow I'm going to have a rebirth, and so they start entering events, to kind of reclaim what they had when they were a teen. Especially when you get a bit older and you've got, your job is a bit steadier and you've got a family now and you don't have to quite ask for so many permission slips from your wife, or your husband, things are a little bit steadier. And then there's the other type of those who are, I guess, sort of a mixture of me and others, but where you have been in the military of some form or another. And that again, awoken you a feeling that you're able to do much more than you imagine that you can do. And then you stop, and then you refocus your life on trying to build a career for yourself, and so you're back to kind of where you were when you were 20. So then once you've got a bit more, you're like, oh, I want to find my identity again. In my case, the reason why I took up I specifically ultra running, I just kind of leapt into that. I didn't really go through the foreplay of 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, I kind of just did
straight
one half marathon, straight in, just go hard or go home, basically. So the reason I did that was to find a new identity. I felt that I just felt like I liked being able to say I was a professional trained killer. It was something quite cool about knowing that I was there. I was about as kind of beyond the rat race. I was there serving my country, serving my men, and I was, in all intents and purposes, a professional athlete without looking like one. So when I left, I didn't have that, and that's why I chose to sort of embark on this very amateurish and weekend warrior-esque career of entering stupid sounding races that promised death and destruction, and permanent scarring, and because I don't know, it sounded exciting, and the sort of thing that most people wouldn't want to do, and therefore I should do it.
Absolutely, but that is a very specific mindset. I think the problem with things that most people think they shouldn't do is that most people end up not doing them. Whereas you seem to have developed a mindset where you're looking at the thing that everyone else is running away from and going, "That looks like fun," And you developed what you seem to have developed, because I'm looking over your shoulder there, and there are an awful lot of medals just hanging up there.
I'm quite pleased with this. It's my new medal rack. I've just found my medals after they were hidden for 5 years in a packing box, and I've been looking for them. And I just thought, I can't be all lost. And eventually, I found them because we moved house 5 years ago, and I haven't finished unpacking. And so I made a little wooden. You can't really see it properly, but a wooden board, and I started hanging them all up. I've got quite a few. They don't look very many, but there's a good number there.
That's a very satisfying set of wind chimes you've got there behind you. That's fantastic. But I mean, looking at your CV, you've covered a lot of quite different types of races and events as well, haven't you? I sort of talked to quite a lot of people, and they often have sort of a discipline in particular that they're very passionate about, and they go back to that over and over and over again. You seem to spread a little bit more. You've done 3 Ironmans. You're a sub 3 hour marathoner, which is outrageous. More.
Yeah. Four. In a summer, actually. four in the space of a year. Then I haven't done another one since. I thought that's enough. I've done a lot of weird. I've done everything from sort of wife carrying and 1 mile runs to zombie racing to, expedition style adventure racing to, your 5Ks, 10Ks, fast and furious flat stuff to, multi-day ultra runs from the Jungle Ultra that you guys have done to desert stuff, to mountain running, to sky running, to, mud runs, your obstacle course racing, Ironman triathlons, sprint triathlons, Olympic distance triathlons, half Ironman, like duathlons, swim runs, done the Otelo, that kind of stuff. In mountain bike racing, like Cape Epic and stuff like that. The devices to Westminster. I mean, like literally, paddling. There's I don't know why. I know why. to a point, I get asked. I used to. I don't so much anymore, but I used to get asked to do these crazy races, and so I'm not very good at saying no. So I would go and do them, and then I would panic a little bit when I realised I don't know how to mountain bike or I don't know how to paddle or whatever. And I'd go off and learn for a few weeks, and then I'd go off and do it.
Yeah, fantastic though. I love that, and one of the things I really enjoy about doing this podcast, I get to talk to a lot of people who've gone out and done really, really awesome things, and they all come from slightly different places. There are things that unify you, but I've talked to a lot of people who are sort of really focused on ultra running, and they'll talk very much about the zen they feel on the trail and how much they love the scenery and engaging with it and stuff. But then you get people who are more like you, who it's you're like a kid in a toy store. Like there's whatever new challenge comes up, if it looks interesting, they're into it, and they will go and figure out how to do it on the way. I get the impression that's something else that comes with a military mindset, that ability to throw yourself into a new situation and sort of figure out the details as you get there.
Completely. I mean, going back a bit, when you're at Sandhurst, and the first semester is a bit shock and awe. You know, you really are going from being should we say, it's like modelling. You're being modelled into this sort of this uniformed person that everybody's the same. You all literally become the same, like I don't know, like you just get copied basically, and broken down and rebuilt, I guess. And so in about the 6th week into the course, you basically go off on a 60-mile hike with a Bergen. I'm trying to think of the name now. I've kind of forgotten what it's called. It's like Best Intentions, or it's got one of those funny names. Anyway, so so it's in Wales in the Brecon Beacons, and it's a 60-mile tab hike with a Bergen. I can't remember if you're carrying a weapon or not, but it's, if it is, it's got a blank on it in the front.
My brother did 12 years in the army, and I've got his army Bergen in my room over here as his old pack. It's huge. It's a nightmare to carry about over any distance.
Yeah, they're big. And they're not comfortable, and they're heavy, and you have to have a certain weight limit. So you know exactly if you've got one in the corner of your room.
Yeah.
So they ask you to go off and do this tab as a group, and you're doing, not just are you doing 60 miles, but you're also having to do it roughly within like a day, and you're carrying this weight, and you're doing command tasks, and each command task someone else takes over as the leader of that group, and you're in a group of 4 to 6 people, and along the way you're also having to be a little bit stealthy, and it's hard. And I remember coming back from that and feeling a complete sense of awe of myself, that I've never been further on foot than, I mean, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 miles. I mean, like not very far. And suddenly I'd gone 60. I mean, I might as well have just gone to the moon and back, and I was so chuffed. I was so genuinely chuffed with what I'd achieved, and that was the real beginning, the eye opener for me of anything is possible. And that's why, if I can go from being literally a Teletubby kind of soldier, day 1, week 1 of this course, and 6 weeks later I'm doing a 60-mile tab in the Brecon Beacons up, nothing's flat about the Brecons, and in a group doing command tasks, with no sleep, and I achieved it in, I don't know, 26 hours or something like that. That for me was just mind blowing. And since then, I've kind of taken the same thing. I shouldn't admit this, but I don't do a lot of training. Generally speaking, I'm lucky. I am lucky that I can cuff it to a certain degree, and a huge amount of it is mental, because I know that I can do it, so that confidence is there, and then having a bit of inherited fitness from that kind of time in the army, that kind of laid the really good solid foundations, and upon which I then built it. And now I'm 43. I have to train. I have to work a little bit harder than I was when I was in my early 30s, just to kind of stay in shape. And but I never followed a training program, or I never actually built up to something, or I didn't do anything. I just kind of bounced from stupid event to stupid event, and hoped I had enough in me to do okay, but I didn't have to win. I didn't, it wasn't like trying to get prize money, or there wasn't. I was there to tell a story, because my first career, I set after the army, my first thing I do is I become an adventure journalist. So I'm writing about these events for magazines and newspapers. So that my main job is to tell a story. The second part of it is a bonus if I do well.
And the medals are behind you. We know you've done well at some of the events, and obviously the journalism worked out for you. I've got to drop it in here. Chris made a point of, I was talking to sort of Chris King, our race director, in the 2 minutes before you came onto the Zoom call, and he was like, "Oh, tell Tobias I was reading Go recently. It's my favorite adventure book." So,
which book was he reading?
Go.
Go. Was he reading Go? Oh, fantastic! Yeah. Yay!
No, well, rereading. He's had it for a good while. So.
Fantastic! Yeah, that's my kind of adventure recipe book, basically, of how to kind of create your own race, how to become your own race director, and it's sort of just everybody can become a race director. You just need to have a little bit of imagination, a sprinkle of booze, and some mates who don't mind joining you for some stupid adventure,
and the willingness to work without sleep for extended periods of time.
Makes it more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely does. And I want to touch on that a little bit more, because there's some of the sentiments from that book that I think are sort of really important and inspiring for people to hear. But just before we jump into that, you have had this sort of quite long running career, and you've done a great spectrum of races. I had a look on your website, and it's a long web page, that one. It's a terrible question, this, and I feel guilty asking it a lot of the time, but which ones stick out? Are there any races for you that you just are just stuck in there in your head that you really remember?
Yeah, and they tend to be the ones that didn't go well, I think. I mean, I'm a great believer in bring on the hail, the storms, the Arctic winds, or anything that makes it a little bit harder, because they tell a better story than the glorious, beautiful crisp spring morning where it's just perfect and the temperature's just right and you just went really fast. But you forget very quickly those kind of events. You need to have the howling wind, the near-death experience, the constant pain, the limping to the finish. And so I guess for me, the ones that stand out that have that element of jeopardy, where I almost didn't finish, or maybe didn't finish, there's only a few, would be one's called the God Zone. It's an adventure race, expedition style, week-long adventure race, sort of 500 plus kilometers, New Zealand, changes every year, the course changes every year, and they call them chapters, and I did the third or fourth chapter, in the South Islands of New Zealand, and essentially it was for Merrill, the footwear company. So we were Team Merrill, and we had a film crew out. The guy that Mungo, who's the Bear Grylls as cameraman, was out filming us, and there was it was quite a lot of pressure to try and succeed in this, because we needed to create a story at the end of it. And anyway, one of the girls, the only girl, dropped out, unfortunately due to an injury, and so we were down to three kind of alpha males without our kind of, should we say, counterpart to keep us balanced. And early on in that session, somehow she went from being the weakest link with her injury, which eventually caused her to pull out, to then me becoming the weakest link, because I had developed essentially foot rot. We did a kayak at the beginning. I didn't change my socks, not thinking that this would be a problem, and all my shoes, and essentially ended up getting really, really, really bad wrinkly feet, trench foot rot, whatever you want to call it. And my feet weren't rotting, but given long enough they would. It's like being in a bath for too long, except it hurts, like it properly stings. Everything hurts about walking and running or doing anything.
First time mentally, sorry, I was just going to say, you've done this race as well, so you'll know where I'm talking about. The first time I worked out in the jungle, I was horribly unprepared for that, and it was red hot pain. I couldn't walk for the last 2 days of the event.
You've had it, yeah. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I learned to take care of my feet the very hard way. Yeah.
So the extraordinary thing is, I mean, I'll come back to it in a second, but I've never before or since had that. And so, I don't get blisters. That's like touch wood.
Touch wood.
Continue. I don't. I mean, I get that tiny little splinter blister. I mean, like tiny one, but nothing to cause any real discomfort. And I don't get trench foot. I don't have feet issues because I look after them. And this is one time I guess I didn't. And I was, we were wearing shoes that, to be quite frank with you, I'd never worn before, when I was with Meron. So this is one of the problems, actually, when you're a sponsored athlete, you get given kit that you haven't really tested out. And we were wearing brand new clothes and shoes that we'd never worn before the day of the race. And then you're going off to doing a 550 kilometer adventure in a pair of shoes that you'd never worn. It's kind of a recipe for disaster. Anyway, my feet did not go down well. And so that for me, I spent the best part of 4 or 5 days wanting to quit. Every single minute.
Wow.
I just wanted to quit. And the only reason I didn't is because, 1, I don't like quitting. 2, I'd come a heck of a long way not to quit. And 3, I would be most importantly, I'd be letting my teammates down, and the film crew, and the whole thing would have been for nothing. So that drove me on, and I just knew it's discomfort. I can get rid of pain. This is not it's not like a fracture or I've broken my leg or whatever. I can still walk. It just hurts a lot, And so, but it did mean that mentally I just felt my face was contorted all the time. It wasn't enjoyable. And so that for me is like a race that really sticks out as somewhere where I had to dig deep into my inner reserves, should we say, to carry on. And ironically, going back to the feet question, when I did the Jungle Ultra, which was the very inaugural edition back in 2012, I remember, doing these runs around Richmond. I lived in London, and I was running around Richmond Common through streams, and I was just trying to get used to the idea of having wet feet, and I went through lots of agonies about what kind of shoes to wear. What are the best shoes to wear when you've got, when they're constantly wet? I think everybody asked that question.
Yes.
And so the set of shoes I wore did absolutely fine, and so I never got any blisters. I didn't have anything wrong. It was amazing, and they were wet the whole week. So the 2012 Jungle Ultra, no problems. Go to 2014, I think is when I did the God Zone, and
just lost. That day.
Yeah, that day, that week, that one moment going wrong. So I've been very lucky, but. Yeah, I don't know I can't remember what your original question was now.
I think we've covered it. I was just looking for races that kind of pop up in your mind when you think back over it.
Yes.
What about favorites?
I've got one other. The Om. Okay, so the Om, the Kim. In both guises I've done it, and it has a special place in my heart. Not a good place necessarily, because it's never really gone that well. It's just one race that's always been slightly condemned with difficulty, and I'm reminded of the first time I did it. About after 5 hours in, I'd elected us for the elite course. This is when you could just do that, and because I was like, we're in the army, we're tough, we'll be fine, we're good at nav. And anyway, our start time got changed when we dropped down to the A category course, and therefore we were the last people to leave, which basically meant that we had very little time to get to the checkpoint. So we were the checkpoints are fixed no matter what time you start. And so anyway, 5 hours in, we couldn't find checkpoint, whatever it was. And I was already getting cramp, and it was just bad. And we ended up turning around and coming back. And so that was my first time doing that race. And the second time, I think that second time I was supposed to do it, and then literally the day I was supposed to go down, I got some horrific hamstring issue that I literally couldn't walk. And so my mate who I was doing it with had to go and find someone else, lastminute.com, to literally that day. Wow. To go and, it was the day before, but you start very early, but that day you had to find someone else, and she did. The third time I did it, I went and did the A course, the elite course, I think the elite course, the A course, and then it went well. It went really well. Finished it, no dramas. It was really good fun. Fourth time I did it, I went with another mate of mine who's like ex-special forces. He's a navigation wizard, a ninja, and I thought this guy's gonna be great. He's done SAS selection. He's done. He's the bollocks when it comes to this sort of thing. We're great mates. We used to serve together, and he's like a half colonel. He's good, yeah. And anyway, the first day went really well. We were flying along. Second day, we were having such a good time. It always rains one of the 2 days, and it was the second day. It was a kind of niceish day, and then it went a bit crappy afterwards. Anyway, we were were chatting away. We were like just like children in the hills, and then got to one of the last checkpoints, and the guy said, "Oh, is anyone else behind you?" I was like, "Well, I don't know, probably." And he was like, "Well, we're about to go and close now." And there was a sudden realization that we'd been taking too long. We'd been too relaxed, and so and you're supposed to seal up your mobile phone, and you know you're not supposed to use it for any form of nav or communication or whatever like that. So anyway, we'd left it behind, and so so we suddenly bombed it off in this sort of like, oh my god, we must get to the finish. And basically, for the first time, we took a wrong turn, and we ended up going down a footpath that wasn't meant. But we went down. When I say down, we went like 600 meters down, and then realised our area had to come back up, and then that basically put us right on the limit of actually not finishing. And then we had stupidly not taken a very good head torch. You know, we had one of those tiny Petzl head torches that was basically you can't even light a cigarette with, and so we were in real danger of not being able to see anything, and it's getting dark, and we still had a bit of a thing, so we hoofed it back. We basically decided not to go to the finish, and we thought we'd just go to the kind of like the should we say the bag finish, like the official finish. After you finished, you go to another place, and we just thought, oh, it doesn't matter, we just won't finish. We've done it. We just won't finish it. We were still ran back. But anyway, my mate, his feet were just in complete, like he had no feet. I mean, when I say no feet, he had no skin on his feet. And I had no idea. And they came off in his socks. It was just disgusting. Anyway, our respective wives were waiting for us at the finish, the official finish where we should have been. Okay. And we were, by the time we'd finished, let's say 4 miles further up the road, and we were now kind of like trying to like get ourselves back together. We were very cold, it was wet, we were just trying, we hadn't actually opened up our phones yet, and anyway we eventually did, and we said, oh, hi, we're here. Okay. And just this, both wives literally lost it on us for a second, because they'd been panicking. They're thinking we're lost in the hills. They'd been there for ages thinking we're good runners. We should have finished hours and hours and hours ago. So anyway, after that experience, both our respective other halves have banned us from doing that race again. And then when Zane and I, my wife jokingly talk about, and she runs a lot as well, and we talk about, we've done a lot of things. We did even the Otelo the week before our wedding. We got married during a wedding, during a marathon. And so, yeah, it's the one race we say we will never do together, because there's a good chance we might not finish together, so to speak. It's not a recipe for a long-lasting marriage.
It's for the best. That medal isn't worth your marriage at the end of the day.
You don't even get a medal with your arm.
What?
You just I think you get a T-shirt. That's it. T-shirts are good.
Did I just hear you say you got married during a marathon?
Yes. Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Not just any marathon. The Marathon du Médoc. It's a classic. It's a wine marathon in the Bordeaux region.
Fantastic.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, wine and countryside and running. I mean, why not? You've put everything together there.
Yeah. Yeah, with our guests as well. Our guests were all running it with us as well. So then we hired one of the vineyards to get married at. So yeah, it was quite cool. Except of course, many of our guests, the ones like my brother-in-law, who's also Army, he's much better drinker than he is a runner, and so he took the drinking bit way more seriously than the running bit, and so I'm trying to pull him away from the various vineyards. It's quite hard work. So I do stupid things. We had a marathon honeymoon as well in the Cayman Islands, we had 4 weddings, and 2 of them involved a marathon, and the honeymoon involved a marathon, and so anyway, that's kind of how we rock and roll in the Mews household.
That is dedication. I'm distinctly impressed by that. Hi everyone, sorry to interrupt. Just here to remind you that this episode was brought to you by Resilient Nutrition, and you can find their full range of elite long-range fuels exclusively on the BTU store now. The elite long-range fuels are a series of delicious nut butter products with micronutrients and supplements designed to give you exactly what you need when you need it. They're delicious, they're great for fueling your whatever your adventure is, and you can find them on the BTU store and nowhere else right now. Store.beyondtheultimate.co.uk. That's store.beyondtheultimate.co.uk. Okay, let's get back to the podcast. Well, I guess we touched on the book. We talked about Go. I'd like to travel back a little way to there now. It's obvious that you get a lot that's very positive out out of taking on these kind of challenges? You are so animated and enthusiastic when you talk back about them. It's sort of clear that they're a huge benefit to you. How do you go about helping people put themselves in that place? How do you go about convincing people who haven't taken on these kind of challenges that they can take that step themselves? I mean, if you could just read the whole of your book to me now, that'd be...
Yeah. How long have you got? So no, I think it's very simple. Actually, I think it's really it's the only person that's ever going to tell us that we can't do something is ourselves. That's it. There are exceptions, of course, to parents sometimes telling their children, no, you're no good for doing this. But on the whole, it's us. We put the negative word in our head that says, no, you can't do it. You're not ready. How many times have you said to a mate, hey, come and do this, oh, you should go and run a marathon or an ultra marathon or whatever it is, and they go, no, I've got to go and do my 5K, and I've got to do my 10K, I've got to do my half marathon, I've got to do my marathon, I've got to do that for like several years, and then I'll do an ultra marathon. But they've got to do the order. And they're too afraid to push the boundaries of their own self-created kind of limitations. And as I said, so I think if the biggest thrill I get is persuading someone to just go out and try it. I mean, like yesterday, for instance, I bumped into one of my neighbours. I was on my bike taking my kids back from school, our school creche, and I bumped into one of my neighbours, and I didn't realise she ran. And she was, I've parked my. She lives about 5K away from me, and she said, I parked my car at the bottom of the hill. I'm only just doing a quick, sort of 4 or 5K. I said, that's great. She said, I just don't really seem to get any quicker, and I only run a couple of times, a couple of times a month. And I said, listen. Okay, you're going to promise me today, it's Monday. You are going to run every day this week. Doesn't matter how far you run, just make the point of going for a run. Because as soon as you create that habit, then you'll realize, how beneficial it is to regularly do something. Because the longer you leave, the bigger the gaps, basically, the harder it is to actually improve. And so I said, just set yourself a goal. At the end, by the end of the week, you want to have run 30 kilometers, for instance. So today you might do 5, tomorrow you might do 2, the next day you might do 10, you might do 3, but as long as ultimately you kind of get to 30 or whatever your goal is, that's your first goal. And your second goal is just to actually just try and run every day and do that run streak and just try it for a week and see how you get on. I mean, even just doing 3 days in a row, that's a start. And I think it's the baby step things is good, which is why people start with the kind of the small races and build themselves up, but they're not essential. Anyone. It's like Vassos Alexander has just written a book called like Anyone Can Run a Marathon. It's true, anyone can. What makes it difficult is trying to run it quickly. That's the thing, is how much time you want to do it in. And if you just say, hey, I've got plenty of time, I'm going to get through it, you will get through it. It just might not break any records, So same for running an ultramarathon. Ultramarathons are easy. They're just like, you walk up hills, you eat loads, you stop for breakfast, lunch and dinner, sometimes several times over the course of several days. You just basically eat and run, and you get to eat whatever you like afterwards. And you don't even have to run that fast. You just have to be able to tick over, and they're actually really easy. And when I realized that for the first time when I did my first Ironman, and I didn't realize how essentially slow it kind of is. You imagine it's like, you think like a sprint triathlon where it's go, but you actually have plenty of time, and so if you give yourself the time, you can do it. That's the only thing. Time and confidence, I think, are the two things that say that we can't do something, but you can.
You are giving the game away here. There are ultra runners all over the place thinking, why is he telling everybody this? What's the point of doing this if I can't go to the pub afterwards and tell my non-running mates that I'm literally a hero? You're pulling the rug out from under us.
You have to do it. Humble heroes are the best type of heroes, aren't
absolutely.
They? Yeah.
What sort of race or experience have you been through that you say that has really helped teach you that lesson? Was there something you finished that you didn't think you'd be able to get to the end of?
Yeah, actually, I think that if there was, of all the, when I say I've done like 200 or 300 races, I've kind of like stopped counting at a certain point because it just became I forgot to count basically, so I haven't recounted since. But I've done maybe, let's say, 300-ish, and I've only not finished 2. One is the and And I don't count the one that I kind of officially don't have a finishing time for, because I still ran to the end. I just didn't run to the finish because I couldn't be asked to, put myself through that, and got a bollocky from my wife instead. So I don't count that. But that first arm where I pulled out, and the second race I pulled out from was a local race to an ultra marathon down here in the Pyrenees where I live, called the Grand Trail de Vallée d'Ossau. And that one there I pulled out of because basically I got heat stroke essentially, and so that was a sort of safety call on my side. I felt that wasn't worth carrying on, and so normally I've got the confidence to know that I can do it. I've got enough kind of ticks in the boxes. There was one race though that I went, In fact, there's two races where I had lots of moments. The first time was the Jungle Ultra. The first time I did it, because I'd never run the jungle before. I'd had all sorts of horror stories, and there aren't that many people who can give you advice on the right type of kit to use. I'd never slept in a hammock before. I tried one out for like 5 minutes and swung all over the place and thought this is not going to be a good week of sleep. And trying to figure out the shoes, what shoes are good for draining water. Trying to figure out the clothing situation, because of course you don't want to get bitten by insects and whatever, but you don't want to get any heat issues, but you want to cover up, but you don't want to cover up and get too hot, but you're going to sweat a lot. That all those unknowns. It's like a Mike Stroud sort of central archive resource you need to tap into. And so that race and the Otelo, the swim one world champs, which were held in the Swedish archipelago.
Wow.
Which I did with Zane, and I'd heard about this race years and years ago, and then I thought, I'd love to do it one day. But it just sounded so impossibly difficult that I just thought, I'm not a swimmer, so why would I ever do this? And then eventually I wrote to the organizer and said, hey, I'd love to do your race, love to write about it. What do you reckon? And they said yes, unbelievably. And then I was like, oh, who shall I choose to come with me? So I asked my wife, thinking she would say no, because it's quite difficult. If you say to your wife, this is one of the toughest endurance challenges in the world, what do you reckon? And by the way, it's the week before our wedding. They'd probably go, not a good idea. When I say the week, literally it's the weekend before. So yeah. In fact, it was only like, literally, it was 6 days before. So, she said yes, and then I panicked a bit, thinking, "Oh, bollocks! This is actually going to be maybe quite difficult because neither of us are that experienced in this kind of thing." And so there was this was back in 2014, and even then it exploded the following year. But there were very, very few blogs, articles. There's very little information out there on how to go about doing it. And what I loved about it was just this complete experimentation of trying to work out what kind of hand pedals to get, what are the best wetsuits. We're just cutting down our triathlon suits, trying those out, went through loads of shoes. In the end, kind of Innovate turned out to have some of the best shoes for kind of running and swimming, it turns out. For my experience anyway. And so it was like going back to basics about how to, it was a true adventure. It's how to do something the most efficient way possible. And the cutoffs are like tighter than a wizard's sleeve. I mean, they are brutal little things. And so you have to be quite clever. It's a tortoise and the hare type scenario. And when we finished that first swim, there's like 10 kilometers of swimming and something like 65k of running. Yeah. So the first swim, I can't remember how far it is. Let's call it 1500 meters. It's one of the hardest swims. And I remember everybody like desperately tried to touch the water to see how cold it was. And it was pretty cold, like 11, 12 degrees. And anyway, once you're all in a group and you're running off down to the shore and you dive in, you forget about the cold because everybody's going in. We finished second but last, coming out of the water in that first swim. It was, at one stage I thought I was actually going backwards. I might well have been. And so anyway, we finished just, and we crawled out. And what I wasn't expecting is how hard it is to get out of, I never practiced this, how to get out of the sea on a slippery kind of stone-like shore. I mean, when I say stone, it's like a big rock. And I felt like a seal trying to kind of like slither his way upwards. Somehow Zane is like, she seems to like somehow grip onto this rock. I didn't. I was like just like Bambi on ice. It's falling off. It couldn't get out. So eventually we got out of the water and I thought, oh my good God, we've got another 73 kilometers to go. How is this going to, we're already like last, and I'm not used to being last, if I'm being perfectly honest. And so then we just thought, okay, don't worry, we'll catch them up on the run, because the running is where we're good. And this is I wouldn't say it's a swimmer's event, but you'd need to be a strong swimmer in order to think you can swim 10 kilometers, don't you? It's twice the distance of an Ironman swim, even more than. So we just slowly crawled back, and then we then got ahead of the checkpoints, and we just kept on going at the same speed, and we had this mantra: just never stop, never stop, never stop. And that's all we did. We just didn't stop, even at nothing. We just kept on going for 11 or 12 hours or whatever, however long it took us, and we finished. And that, doing that with Zane, but the fun bit was training with her, but actually just having something to do with your wife, of that kind of real racing adventure-y type thing, that sticks out as one of the best experiences I've ever had. And we've done plenty of races together, but that was something else.
Oh, that's fantastic. And the week before your wedding as well. What a brilliant achievement to have gone through together just before that as well. And you recovered well enough to run a marathon the following weekend.
Yeah, we did. It's a very good distraction away from Wedman. It was, rather than sort of doing wedding day lists and, planning like all the other stuff you go through, we were just too busy trying to work out our packing list and, getting our training down to some sort of vague plan. It was a very vague plan. We went out to 4 recce's. We would do a lot of running. We lived in Balham. We would run in our wetsuits with our kind of our hand pedals attached, and we would run down to Tooting Lido and then do a swim and then run back. And we got the strangest looks going down Tooting High Street in our wetsuits. Very odd looks.
The first time I ever ran on snowshoes, I did a half marathon along the beach in Bournemouth. Wearing snowshoes and full Arctic racing kit.
Naturally swallow. Nice. Literally, you were wearing proper snow. Not even. We're talking like
No, we're talking full on TSL snowshoes. Me and Chris, when I was training to do the Ice Ultra in 2017, we got some odd looks that day. Nobody had any idea what we were up to.
It's when children start to stop and stare and say, "Mummy, Daddy, what are those people doing over there? They look weird, don't they? Why are they so strange?" Yeah, that's. I'm used to getting small children staring at me with some degree of complete puzzlement.
Well, you touched on something there that I'd just like to ask you about before we sort of start wrapping this up. I'm sort of aware that I'm taking a lot of your time. There's no doubt that when you do these kind of races, when you do these kind of challenges, there are times during it where you're thinking, why did I sign up for this? You're second to last, and I don't know if it's possible to make the next checkpoint, and my feet hurt, and I've miscalculated, and you can really get yourself into a fog. And I think looking at these kind of challenges from the outside, people are put off by the idea that they won't be able to manage those moments. So do you have any advice for that? What pushes you through those moments where you're thinking, I have bitten off more than I meant to chew here?
I keep going. Okay, so I suffer from FOMO, and if I see a race with, let's say there's 4 distances, and it starts off at let's say an ultramarathon starts off at 15k, and then it goes to 40, and then it goes to 80, and there's one at 170, I would naturally go for the 171, even though I kind of think sometimes, I should probably do the shorter one, So that's the first thing. And then the second thing that happens about I don't know at what point in, maybe about sometimes a couple of hours, sometimes half a day, sometimes a day in, and then I normally end up falling in step with someone else, and I go, did you start thinking about why did you do the 170 when you could have finished the 80 by now? We could be back home in bed, comfortably resting, but we're still out here doing this bloody long race. And I think everybody has a moment of why didn't I go for the half? Why didn't I start doing 5Ks? What gets me through it? One, failure lasts forever. Pain doesn't. That old mantra. It's only temporary. Second, when I say temporary, it really isn't very long. The discomfort that it's not like, I'm mates with a guy called Ben Saunders. He does these ridiculous, 2,000-mile journeys to the South Pole. That's a different scale. I think mine's just like a 1 mile, 1 kilometer race in comparison to doing a 2,000 race. My stuff. So I know it's not that bad. No one's shooting at me. I'm not in danger really of losing my life unless I do something really drastically stupid and I fall off a cliff or something. But on the whole, I'm in a good environment. I've got checkpoints. I've got medical people. I've got helicopters. I've got food whenever I need it. I mean, a race is the safest place ever to push yourself. I mean, it's like literally your parents taking you cycling for the first time and you're trying to get your stabilizers off. I mean, this is a race is where you try out. A race is where you experiment with what you're good at and what you're not. A race is never the place to quit. You quit when you're doing your own stupid adventure where you've got your spotter's now no longer got batteries. You're so far away from aid that you're thinking, well, no one will ever find me if I fall down this ravine. That's when you have the other bit that says maybe we should turn back. But you don't turn back in a race. You don't stop. There's no reason to. You just have to plow on. The only reason you should stop is you are physically in danger. Like I say, heat stroke or massive dehydration or whatever it is that you're going to have some real issue afterwards. But if it's just a bit of discomfort because you've got a blister, well, stop, sort your blister out, carry on. If you're just feeling a bit tired, stop and have a sleep. There's no reason to stop. So that's what I say to myself: don't stop. Just get to the end and then sort yourself out. And the other thing is, you never quit going uphill. That's silly because it will get easier again. And also be very careful about having your family come to visit you during a race, because sometimes they will get to the point where checkpoints are, and it will feel all too easy just to kind of go, oh well, I'll go back with you then. I don't need to finish this. It's okay. And it's much more convenient because either I come back with you or I won't see you for another 14 hours. So I might as well come back now, if you're in discomfort. So I just think sometimes you're better off just being on your own, smashing through it, finishing and knowing it's done. And then you don't have to go back and do it again, because there's nothing worse having to repeat a race because you didn't finish it the first time.
Very, very wise words. If you are going to repeat that race again, you're going to have to get all the way back to the point where you quit the first time and then do the rest.
It takes so much longer.
Yeah, and it's psychologically a much tougher journey as well.
Yeah. You have to think about, let's say you're halfway through a 100-mile ultra marathon, and you've got let's say 15 hours in the bag already. You've got another 15 hours to go. Whatever. I'm just making numbers up, and you either go on for 15 hours worth of discomfort. Okay, fine, you might not get the position you want, or it's not going as well as you'd like it to go. You got 15 hours of discomfort, or you stop. You then have to repeat the months of training, the financial loss. You have to repeat those 15 hours again, and then do another 15 hours on top of that. I mean, it doesn't make sense. 15 hours now, or months later, and a year down the line. Just get it done. Don't quit.
Just get it done. Don't quit.
Yeah, just get it done.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's what yeah.
Well, I mean, Tobias, they might be good words to end on. I feel like we've
maybe
there's the overriding message of the podcast right there. We've filtered it all down into those 5 or 6 words. Fantastic.
Wise words. Maybe they'll become one of those words that when people Google for famous phrases. Maybe one day they will become one of those. Who knows? Probably not.
I'll stick it on a T-shirt for you or something. I'll make sure it's prominently displayed in the description of this podcast. Let's see if we can get that ball rolling. Tobias, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you this afternoon. Thank you very much for taking the time. I'm sure everyone who's listening to this is going to have found it inspirational. This is one of those episodes that's fantastic long run material. So thank you very much.
What have we done? Well, my absolute pleasure. And thank you for inviting me on. And just and obviously this is a podcast hosted by an events company, and I've only done one of your events, but for me, what you do are true adventures. I mean, like in the sense of the coziness of having a support team, because the XR medics, I'm assuming, are the same ones now with you now.
We wouldn't go with anyone else.
They're amazing. They're amazing, and they've become friends by the end of the week. And so, if you're ever thinking about doing something that's a little bit out there, should we say, the stuff that your mum might start going, oh, are you seriously going to do that? No, you can't. And this is if you're ever going to go push the limits, push the envelope, should we say, one of your races, I'd love to do the others. I mean, I genuinely think that they're life-changing experiences, and you'll only grow for them. And I think back to the fact that I did most of my big races at the very beginning of my athletic career, and I'd only been running for like 4 years by the time I'd done the Jungle Ultra, and it it stands. It remains in your memory forever. Basically, it's one of the greatest things I've ever done. So I hope everybody else will have that experience if they want to one day do one of their races.
Well, I have to tell you, I hope everyone else will come and have one of those experiences as well. Thank you very much, Tobias. That's
my pleasure.
That's what we aim to do. So thank you very much for that, and I'm glad you had a wonderful time back then. We'll have to talk about this in a non-podcast setting.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Will, and I wish you the best of luck, and I hope it all goes brilliantly in the future for you guys.
Thank you very much. You have a fantastic rest of your day.